Alrighty, hey, welcome to Clan's podcast. Your hosts are Jonathan Buehlmann, me. I'm the Preventions Activities Coordinator here at Clan. That's a Cultural Language Arts Network, and my co-host is...
I'm Miiskogihmiiwan. I am a Program Coordinator.
Today we have Hope Flanagan. Yay! Hope. So, Hope, who are you, and what's your tribal affiliation, and where'd you grow up?
Yes, I was told that it's always good to do your introductions in the language, because you're not just speaking to the human ones that are around you, but the spirits are always around us, and the plants might be listening, the little ant in the corner out there might be listening. So I'm going to do my introduction and then just mention what I'm saying here. Ahaw. Bujun indinawe maganiduk niji bimadizik nundinantikwe indigo hope indigenakaza majaganashimuin mekinak nindu dame tal wandishkunaganing in dunjaba miajiguang inginoki ama dream of wild health Myanmar yijichigedo o ashinano bibunigas. And this time of year is the storytelling niwi adezuke. So what I'm saying is my English name is Hope Flanagan. My Indian name is Little Wind Woman. It was given to me by an elder named Rose Barstow many years ago, my Niawa'a. And she had told me that, if you're going to go out and fetch plants and help elders, you need to learn the language. So my clan is Turtle. I'm from Tonawanda Reservation out east. And she had told me, Rose had said, when you go and pick plants, these are plants that are here that are going to talk to you, the ones that are in Ojibwe country. So you better learn how to speak Ojibwe. So I was grateful for that, because there's so many teachings that are embedded in the language. I'm working at Dream of Wild Health, and I've been there going on 15 years now. So it's been a long time. I get to teach about wild plants. I get to do storytelling. Right now it's red willow picking season for making our own herbal tobacco. They call Mitigo Asema. So it's time to get your stick tobacco and make it so you can have your offerings when you whatever you do. We're always using tobacco. Akawe Asema. Remember, first comes tobacco.
That's pretty awesome, because me and Miisko are actually both alumni of Dream Wild Health.
Yes.
I went for a couple of years, and I know Miisko went for a couple of years, and we all know Hope many years now.
Great role model, very knowledgeable, carries the traditional teachings of food, language, just a good lifestyle, that lady.
Yeah.
And I want to say it right back at these two. These two are the young role models we need. I'm so thankful. So thank you for being here and doing this work. It's not easy to stand up as a young person and to be a role model in this world. So I'm really proud to be sitting next to these two, to Miisko and Jonathan.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that kind of segues into our next question. So what previous programs have you worked at before? And if so, what has your experience been? And then how did you get there? And how did that affect your...
Sure. When I was little, my mom and my sister and I used to go out picking plants all the time. And we had moved closer to the cities when we were fairly little. And my mom would always say to me, go help that elder. Go over there and help that elder. That's the way to do things, So I was grateful for that. But she would always teach me about plants. And I remember my very first memory of anything, I think either 2 or 3, and she was pointing out these plants, and I remember one of them was yellow water lily root, and I was looking at it, and I was like, I don't know if that's a plant or an animal, So all through my life, I'm so grateful that I was given that opportunity to start thinking about plants. So early on, there would be elders that maybe they couldn't get around as well anymore, and they'd say, "Oh, would you go fetch me this?" And they might say it in Ojibwe, they might say it in English, and then I felt like that was a gift that I could go do something to be helpful to them. So that was one of the ways I got started. My very first job, well, I volunteered in the community when Division of Indian Work started in the 70s. We had American Indian Spiritual Growth and Culture Camp. So we worked out, we had 100 Native youth over in St. Croix, the St. Croix Band area over there. And they had asked me to go talk about plants. So like, I can do that. So that's kind of how I got started.
Oh, wow.
So I worked at Division of Indian Work in the Youth Leadership Development Program for quite a while. Then I worked in the Teen Indian Parents Program. I worked at Golden Eagles at the Minneapolis American Indian Center.
Holy.
I worked at the summer school, Indian Ed summer school for Minneapolis Indian Ed. Then later I worked with Anishinaabe Academy as the school storyteller for 6 years. And then I got to work at Wichoye Nundagekendan in the Ojibwe Immersion Program for 10 years. Now, recently, I've been working at Dream of Wild Health.
Oh, wow. So all the work you've done is like in this community.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. So did you like grow up here, or did you come here?
Well, this is something that happened.
Okay.
There was a really rough time in my life, and I think a lot of us in the Native community have had some really rough times in our lives. And I was at a point where I didn't think I could make it anymore. And I ended up not wanting to live anymore. And I had gotten deeply into pills. And I was locked up because I had thought about, I don't want to live anymore. And a friend of mine, a dear friend, Becky Stately, came and visited me, and she goes, "You know, we need you, Hope. We need you in the community." And I was there on the unit, and they believed in me. They said, "We think you can do it. You can be all right. You can come out of this." And that's where I kind of got started on my road, when they believed in me at Division of Indian Work, and said, okay, they gave me back my life, so this is gonna be my life, to give back every bit of what I didn't have for so long.
Right. So I guess, I don't know, a personal question that I may have is just was there any way that, what was I going to say? Has like learning our culture and knowing our ways helped in any way?
And immeasurably. Like a lot of getting on a good road is about spirituality. In our culture, the language, everything is about spirituality. It's about, what are the spirits around us? How do we show respect? How do we show that we're humble? How do we walk in this world with an awareness of each other? And if our job is to act as a tribe, to love you two as my own children. You are my own children in our own way, so if we remember those old ways, we won't go into those big wells of depression and anxiety, because we know we're needed. I mean, I'm needed to be here for you two, and you're needed to be here for me.
Yeah. Oh man, that's I absolutely love your support system.
Yeah.
And the way that you do show support for everyone else is just really amazing. And just hearing your kind words is just really, really needed and really awesome. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're telling the stories that you do, and you're passing that knowledge on. So that's really awesome.
Okay. And another thing that I've learned from Hope, over the years, and just being at Dream of Wild Health and being in the community, is that, we're not alone. We're learning these teachings together. We're trying to bring back the language and these lifestyle back together. And so, sometimes when I get into those types of feelings, I just feel like, oh, nobody cares, I'm alone, it doesn't matter if I'm here. But it really does matter if you're here, because if we're not going to learn the language, if we're not going to be here and be proud of who we are, who is, and I know a good message that Hope has given me is just to learn the language and pass it on. That's, I don't know, for a while I was like, that's what I'm here for, is I'm here to learn and I'm here to pass it on. And that's, I don't know, a big message I feel like Hope passes on to all our youth, and I feel like that's a good message to have.
I want to say that I think sometimes I feel like the outside world is starting to see.
Yeah.
They're starting to see what we have, this beautiful gift of respect and honor. I mean, people sometimes they see like something like one of the things I recently heard is 80% of the world's biodiversity is on native land because we respected it. We took care of it. And now I hear people saying, how did you do it? How did you survive when there was genocide and all that sickness and when there was this desire to wipe native people off the face of the earth? So, we go through some troubled times right now, but we just went through that. So it's kind of like I heard somebody say recently, the Native folks don't seem to be like as negatively affected as some other people at the changes that are going on right now. And I think it's because we've been through a lot and we know this is what it's like. And to survive, you come closer and take care of each other.
Yeah. Been there, done that, Yeah. Yep. And then I feel as Native people, we come together more as a community. I see that a whole lot, and I do see it a lot with just Native people in general. It doesn't matter what program or even if you're part of a certain community. I mean, you find your Native community, even if when you're just around Native people, and especially elders. Elders seem to bring a lot of people closer together, like not like right away, or I mean, it's just subconsciously, you kind of flock to people that either respect you and respect them back, and they also tell a lot of stories because they have a lot of knowledge. So it's really awesome,
Yeah, and kind of like going with that. So how you're, what was I gonna say? I was gonna bring in how how we respected the earth and respect each other. We don't take without giving back. We don't expect, this earth we take and take and take, and we never take care of it. That's what we did, is we took care of the earth. I mean, it's the same way how we would under Remote Health, where I learned how we planted the 3 sisters together. They help each other in different ways, and that's like how our relationship is with the world, with each other, with the spirits. We're not always constantly taking, and so I guess kind of leading into a next subject is the use of tobacco, and how one thing that we always do is either if we're asking for knowledge or if we're asking for something, we offer tobacco, but also if we're picking plants, we offer tobacco. And so what is your knowledge on the uses of traditional tobacco?
Oh, there's so many things. When I was younger, it was hard to get access to the seed tobacco because a lot of our tribes for thousands of years had the seeds, and it was usually a man would pass it on to his son, and they would grow that tobacco, and then it would be generations like that. That's called Nicotiana rustica. So it was one kind of tobacco. All of that was east of the Mississippi, all those different tribes, and some west of the Mississippi had those seeds too, but those seeds were traded to different tribes, and then they were raised for so long that the different plants looked different. So you can even see, if you see that Nicotiana rustica from, say, one tribe, say, Hidatsit, and then the Arikara tobacco, they'll look completely different, but it's the same tribe or the same tobacco. They were just grown in different ways by different people for so long that they ended up looking different. So that's the seed tobacco. And then the herbal tobacco is when there were tobacco blends that were made. So if you'll hear all sorts of words like chan-sha-sha, like red or bark red. So Miiskogihmiiwan, they're talking about that red willow. And when that's used, this is this time of year right now to make your red willow tobacco. And I was shown by a number of people how this is how we do it, and this is how we do it. But it was basically the same, where you take off that outer red layer, and you can set that aside. And then that inner layer, that green layer, that's going to be dried. And that's so often what's used in the opwagan or however, when you're doing your thank yous, when you're doing your ceremonies. There is commercial tobacco. And when I was younger, sometimes that was all people had access to.
Yeah.
So it was important to not be judgmental and say like, oh, you shouldn't be using that. It's all full of poisons and chemicals and formaldehyde. And there's many, many, many difficult chemicals in there that will harm you. But sometimes that's all people had when they said, do you have tobacco? And that's what they would use. Nowadays, I'm so grateful to see this resurgence of growing the seed tobacco, which is really strong. I'm not going to say it's not strong. It is strong. And the herbal tobacco. And in herbal tobacco, families often had herbal blends. So not that long ago, I brought a young lady from True Well Health up to Canada, and they said, oh, we're so glad you're here. We wanted to teach you your dad's herbal blend.
Aww.
So yeah, so she got to learn the plants that were in that particular blend. And most of them were for liver, for helping the liver. So when you think about how do you get the medicine into your body from a plant? So that's where you might say, well, you inhale it. So if you think of that was the whole idea. When Europeans got here, they didn't do that. They didn't know about that. So back in the day, when you think about, okay, there's different medicines, how do you get it into your body? But also the other thing is you got to remember that these plants are really powerful. So tobacco is really powerful. So if you use it for prayer, it's powerful, but you play with it, it's powerful. So sometimes I'm reminded that people will say, well, tobacco has killed more people than war has because of the addiction and the smoking. But also you could use it in that way for prayer, for healing.
Yeah, like it could be just as strong either way. It's your attention that you have behind it.
Right.
All right. Do you want to say a next question?
Yeah, you touched on a lot of our our topics right away, but briefly going back, real quick, you teach star knowledge, right? And going into that, how did you learn star knowledge teachings? Or
so I just shared a little bit of this with
Yep.
Miisko and Jonathan that I feel like I've really been given so many gifts. There was a time in my life where I had gotten really sick and I had trouble breathing. I couldn't go into most buildings. In fact, I had worked at Golden Eagles at the Indian Center and I couldn't breathe there anymore. And I just cried because I loved working at the Indian Center. So I quit working there and it ended up where I felt like I was housebound because I could breathe only at my house. And I was there for quite a while. And a dear friend of mine in this community, after about 4 months, she said, come with me. They're going to open a new school. The school is going to be called Anishinaabe Academy. And she said, and I said, I don't think I can go. I probably can't breathe there. She said, well, it's going to be outside. The grand opening will be outside. So I went there and I went in the building and I could breathe there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel good here. And it's Native people. And I feel this really good intention of working with young people and doing good work. So I went to the principal. It was Mike Hurst. And I asked Mike, I said, gosh, do you have any jobs here?
yeah.
And he said, yeah, we do. We have a job. It's an ATOD storyteller. And I said, oh, I can't do that. I'm no Ona Kingbird. 'Cause I knew Ona from back in the day. She was an amazing, amazing storyteller. And I'd seen her tell stories for years. And she had puppets and she would act it out. And she would tell them in Ojibwe and then she'd translate them. And oh my gosh, it was just a joy to watch her. And Mike said, you don't have to be Ona. Just get Ona in here so she can tell the stories. So that was my job for 6 years. I would bring elders in and then they would tell stories. And I got to be really popular. We had family nights where we'd have 300 to 500 people show up at a shop.
Yeah.
Because they would tease me and say, oh, you're going to have Hope's variety show. It was the young ones who were acting out the stories or doing skits or doing what they had in the language. So it wasn't me, it was them. But after quite a while, Ona was getting older, and I went to a storytelling event at Augsburg, and this was 6 years later, I think, or maybe even more than that. And she and her family was up there, and Bonnie's still around, and, Joe is around. And anyway, they said, okay, Ona wants to pass these stories and these things on to you. So they passed on those puppets and those stories to me. And now for me, I truly believe for the rest of my life, I have to tend those stories. So in the language, those stories are alive. Those are living beings. So the stories are alive. The characters are alive. They're very real. And when you talk about them, they show up or they're listening. So you don't want to take it lightly.
Right.
So Ona, everyone I've known has been like, you don't tell those stories when there's no snow on the ground. When the frogs are singing, you can't tell those stories. So it'd be up to that time. And then when the snow is on the ground, that's when you can tell those stories. When the frogs sing again, you got to stop. You can't tell those stories. So you always want to stay in that area where it's really frozen.
Yeah. Yeah, you answered my question. I was going to ask this. For all the people at home, my question was, why do you wait until winter to tell stories? But that you answered it perfectly, because then, man, I mean, those stories, they're alive, those
Right.
The characters you talk about, the spirits you talk about, the stories you talk about. It's real, it's alive, it's very powerful too. So you really got to watch out with either what you're saying or what you're doing. And then I'm just glad that you're telling those stories and you're passing them on. And that's going to segue into my next question: is how you briefly told me earlier, but what are you doing to pass on those stories? How are you keeping the storytelling alive with either our youth or with other organizations, things like that?
Well, I'm so grateful you're asking that. And the protocol around the stories too. I just wanted to mention that it's important to feast those stories. Like to offer them food. Think of those characters. Offer them food and tobacco. Just last night, I was meeting with a young man whose family I've known for many generations now, which is just kind of amazing. His name's Wate Abed, and he is been at Dreamwild Health for years as well.
Oh, okay.
And he's he wants to be a storyteller. So last winter we would meet on the weekends, and I'd sit down and I'd say, okay, and he'd always bring me tobacco.
Aww.
And last night he brought me rice that he had gotten himself, and his family went out, and he's been out ricing now. He's getting to be a good ricer too. So thank you, Wate. And tobacco, and we sat down because what we're going to do, it was his idea. He said, let's get together a class with Indian Ed over at Harding High School. Harding High School, where I used to go pick up Miisko. Yeah, and he said, let's meet and we'll work on learning stories. And I love that. So he's talking to his friends, and I talked to their advisor over there, and they said, okay, we'll give you a room. You can sit down and work with the young ones to see, and we'll have a story night. So I'm really excited about that. I'm so happy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish we had that when I was there. Oh, that is super
And
cool.
one of the things, and I know for me, I wasn't given permission to write things down, but some people are. Some people have that. And one of the things the first thing I said, some of these stories you'll find in so many tribal traditions. So I went on like a big old hunt about the Shut-Eye dance story, and I found it in Lakota, Dakota, Ojibwe, Cree, Delaware, Ho-Chunk. So it's like, oh my gosh, it's almost exactly the same except for the trickster changes
Right.
and little parts change. But it's good to see that those stories were shared in the tribes too, with the tribes.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you're passing on your knowledge, and a lot of people are listening. Like we talked about earlier. I mean, you could feel alone, but these stories, they hold a lot of meaning and they hold a lot of value. So maybe you feel like you're not being listened to, but there are people listening, especially young people. They really look up to you, and or anyone really. I mean, if you're old and you feel like you're not really being listened to, there are young people out there that will listen to you. And if you just keep staying on that right path and giving good words of encouragement, people are going to listen. They will either acknowledge you or they'll show you that they've been listening by passing on those stories and things like that.
Right.
So that's really awesome. And then our next segment is going to be, we briefly brought it up, but it's ATOD, which is alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And I love how you brought up tobacco and how you're using the red willow, the chinchasha, to are you teaching it? I'm sorry, were you teaching a class on it?
There's we're doing it with adults this coming weekend, and I just emailed someone today about, let's do this with other, like youth. And there's going to be a group with Dream Wild Health. We're going to go out and go pick red willow and practice picking red willow. Red willow is such a kind plant. I was just seeing they talk about that it's one of the ones that is best at supporting insects and birds. And when you cut it, it'll sprout back. So, or you can either reroot it. So if any of you are like, hey, there's not enough red willow out there, if you gather it, take all the little branches and try to reroot it and, put it back out there. So there's some for your kids and your grandkids. And usually, though, it takes only one season for it to sprout back. So it can sprout pretty fast. I'll be doing that. This time of year is the best time of year because that red willow is really, really red. And there's lots of stories. If this is the first plant that you get started with for doing picking out in the woods, this is a good one because it's hard to mess up.
Can't mess up on that one too much. And then, my next question is, have you ever seen tobacco being misused at all? Oh,
yeah. I mean, I've had dear ones that, I always think of the power of addiction is so strong. So it's hard to not ever stand in judgment, but it's true. I mean, our stories talk about that one particular character of the, and they say that is a symbol because when the eats, it gets bigger and hungrier, and that's sort of like addiction, you think, oh, just one more cigarette, but then it's another and another and another. Same with alcohol, same with how this society uses money. It's like a little bit, I need more. I need 14 bathrooms. I mean, it's addiction. And I think this society really, really struggles with cell phone addiction, all kinds of addictions. And definitely, I believe that both cell phones and cigarettes were designed to make people want more so that somebody can make more money. And there goes the big addiction of money. So, it's really tough to fight those. So sometimes people want to say, well, I don't smoke, I'm better, but nobody's better than anybody else. Suppose, I don't have to struggle with the addiction of cigarettes, but for me, I know I have to work on my own self all the time to be aware of what do I do in my life that I need to work on. We all have different lessons we're working on while we're here.
Well, hey, I'm so glad that you're teaching that red willow class because then, I mean, a lot of young people, they don't really know the difference between, we brought it up earlier, but commercial tobacco and traditional tobacco, because then you could go down the commercial tobacco route. No judging, but at the same time, you do have those chemicals, those very harsh chemicals are very addictive, and it's really hard to step away from it too. Even if you are kind of holding yourself accountable, it is still really hard to step away from those commercial tobaccos.
And I do want to mention about ATOD, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. I think about like like even the story of when non-native folks came here. I mean, the first thing Native people were given was alcohol.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, I was reading this story about like, oh yeah, and they gave them tobacco. I'm like, whoa. But if you think about it, they'll even say right on the bottle, spirits, right?
Yeah.
It says on the bottle, spirits. So when you pour that down your throat, your spirit has to leave. When it gets to be, your body is filled up with the spirit of alcohol. And I've heard a number of children that have seen it and said,
I've seen it before.
I thought so. I thought you
Yeah.
talked about that. Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, you can answer it however you want to, but do you have any stories or any stories you'd like to share about any substance abuse? Doesn't have to be personal, but I mean, up to you if you want to answer that.
Here's one that I really feel strongly about. This is somebody I admire a lot, was talking about he was able to get away from the alcohol, but he was really struggling with weed. And he was up north and he walked by this fellow who practiced, that was a healer. And the guy looked at him and said, "You got to stop that." He said, "Stop what?" He said, "I can see it's in you." I said, "What?" He said, "That spirit of weed is in you." And that guy was one of those sucking doctors. And he treated him and he sucked it out and spit it into a bowl. And he looked in there, he said, "That's it. That's that spirit of weed. It was owning you." So anything that's addictive, you don't want to let it own you. So it's a tough one. And now I think about how people of color, they say, well, give them weed, give them alcohol, give them whatever, so they're easier to manipulate. So we've got to be smarter than that, and I think it's tough. It's really tough because, it's addictive, and you've got to get all your arsenal together on how to fight addiction. For me, spirituality is number one.
Yeah.
Prayers, tobacco, I put my tobacco out and pray. I personally go to 12-step meetings, ceremonies. If you're going to ceremonies, make sure you go, like maybe you're getting help to get clean, but don't be going and using the drum and doing those things or the pipe when you're not clean. Give that to somebody else to watch over. If you've got those your items, your spiritual items, have somebody watch over them until you're serious to get clean and come back to this way of being. So they'll help you. They're there for you, but you got to make sure you do the work. They can't do the work for you. Nobody can. I can't get anybody clean and sober. I can't make anybody quit smoking cigarettes, but I'll support in any way I can.
Yeah, and that leads to our next part is, do you know of any programs, support systems, or people that may help people who are struggling with substance abuse, or give them any direction of how to take the next step?
Well, I know some individuals, and, I always think it's important to go to ceremonies.
Yeah.
I can say that I know that White Earth Recovery Group was working for a long time, and some of the folks at American Indian Family Center were doing some excellent work on how do you get and stay sober. I think if you end up asking around about like people who are doing ceremonies, you're going to find out that you have to be clean and sober. You can't do that kind of thing, so you'll see that that's the case most of the time. I know people struggle, and of course sometimes people will fall off. That's going to happen too. But I know for me, I go to 12-step programs. They're not always necessarily Native. For the longest time, I just love the 12-step program at the Indian Center, but Indian Center is not there right now. There's other ones out there. So ask around, like, hey, is there a group, or is there a support group? Is there a sobriety group? I know that they're doing a lot of good work with Richard Wright at the Indian Health Board. He's written some beautiful Day at a Time books in sobriety. Gosh, I know that I go to ceremonies with some and I don't know if I should say names, but I'm really grateful for people like Pebama Benes who run ceremonies that are sober oriented, and help people get on a good and healthy road. So it's out there. Sometimes you have to ask around and find it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I guess like one thing to note, like going off of that, is that, you know, if you are struggling with substance abuse, that you can always come back to, you know, our community. You know, we'll always be here. Like, never feel like ashamed to reach out. Never feel ashamed to come back. You know, we're always waiting for you here with open arms. And yeah, it's I don't know. I can't speak from personal experience, but, you know, I've had family members deal with this, and I try to support them the best way that I can. And, you know, just gotta love them through everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going off what Miisko said, it is a sensitive topic for a lot of Native people, because then I feel like a lot of our homes, a lot of our families, a lot of our family members, friends, all have fell victim to either any kind of substance abuse: alcohol, tobacco, weed, pills, subscription pills, maybe, I don't know. But it's an ongoing problem, and I feel like Hope, you're a really good example of finding your culture, finding your storytelling, finding your cultural purpose to kind of help people come out of that hole, help people come out of not finding themselves, you know, because a lot of Native people are lost. And I feel like it's once you find your cultural identity, you kind of find yourself, and that's when you kind of take accountability for your actions, and you look around and you want to do better for either yourself, your community, your loved ones, things like that. I mean, a lot of people are, like I said, they're lost. So, and I'm glad, Hope, you're really kind of bringing them back together. So that's really cool.
Well, I always think it's not me.
Yeah.
I always say just be hollow bones is what Frank Crow used to say, is just let it flow through you. That's that.
Yeah.
Let the Creator do it. Let the spirits do the work, because they're the ones. Even now, like if when I have a hard time, and I know it's true now. I mean, science is even proving that the leaves, the trees, they put out, you know, they release chemistry into the air that uplifts our spirits. So they're starting to recognize that there's healing out there. If you can spend time with a tree, if you can spend time watching birds or watching the animals. If the humans in your life are hard, go to the non-humans.
Take a step outside.
But I know one of the things I always try to find is find people who see you, who are safe, secure, soothing, and serene. If you can find people like that, if you can find people that you get next to them, you're like, you know, I feel a little better just because Jonathan's in the room, or I'm not as scared because Miisko's right here. Those are the kind of people. It's like, you'll know. So seek them out and try to stay close. I know when I was trying to get back out of that deep, dark hole, I used to say, I feel like I'm trying to build something out of spider webs. It's just like one little teeny tiny step forward at a time. But that's okay. It's one step forward, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take it one day at a time. And then do you have any advice for our youth at all?
Part of the tricky thing is, I hate to say it, but technology has made it way, way harder. Because I know, like, looking into your eye, both of you, looking into your eyes, feeling your presence, I know that it's healing. You know, and I know sometimes over technology, it feels fake, you know, or people feel like, well, you don't really see me, so I can say something really mean and nasty, and I can be really critical. And it's like, always try to think like, there's this word I just love. It's called Gidinotaganag. You're the ones that are listening to you. Like, they're all around you, like your ancestors and people from before this lifetime, maybe, that will never incarnate on this earth. They're around you all the time. So they're trying to talk to you, but you can ask questions of them too. So it's that tog part, that listening and hearing. You can hear them, they can hear you. So kind of being mindful of, I can't be like in secret bad-mouthing somebody. I want to walk in a way that people around me, my ancestor, would be proud.
That's awesome.
I just love when Hope talks. She has so much knowledge.
Hey, Hope, thank you so much for being on our podcast. And then me personally, I mean, I get really sensitive around sensitive topics because then, and I love that you're teaching stories, you're helping the youth, you're teaching Chinchasha. That's awesome because it's like not a lot of information is out there. So it's pretty cool that you're going out there, you're teaching that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if you had any like final remarks and anything you want to share.
Gee, I walked into this room and I saw Memengwesi and Miisko and Jonathan and Cheryl, and I thought, and I said, these are people I love.
Oh.
Find people you can love. It's going to help. It's going to help. So, and I'm so grateful. You know, like if I was still out there using it, like I said, way back in the day, the world was really dark, and that was those dang pills. I really had a hard time getting off of those, but I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
So hang in there. I know somebody said to me, the best might be yet to come. So stick around and see what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, and besides, you know, in our way of thinking, this is just Oma'aki. You know, this is here on this earth, but there's different dimensions. We know that's true. So just because you think like, well, I can toss it over and just do another life, remember, you're always going to have to learn. You know, you don't get through this without learning. You know, like if you're learning about being good to each other, if you're learning kindness or forgiveness or respect or any of those kinds of things, part of the stories that I was told was like, before you come here, you sit down with those 7 grandfathers, or if you want to think of 7 grandmothers or 7 orbs of light, and decide what lesson you're going to learn when you get to this world. And you're only here for a short time, and then you go back home, and then you talk about what you learned, you know? So, that's what you need to do, is think about what am I going to learn and how am I going to walk in this world. Do the best you can. That's all you can do. Miigwech bisandawiya and gekina.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. Hey, thank you so much, Hope. Thank you so much, Miisko. Thank you so much, May behind the camera. That's going to be it for this podcast. Thank you, guys.
Thank